This is ogforums.com Real Talk, an unfiltered, independent perspective on Acumatica Cloud ERP. My name is Tim Rodman, and I want to mention three things in this pre-recorded intro before we get started. First, thank you to our sponsors. Our first sponsor is Paya. Paya offers Acumatica users a suite of industry-leading payment orchestration tools. Far beyond native Acumatica payments, Paya enables EMV NFC terminals for countersale. They offer a frictionless customer portal through their click-to-pay solution, and they support most e-commerce platforms and point-of-sale solutions used with Acumatica, such as One Retail and AcuPOS. And best of all, omni-channel reconciliation is available for all their solutions. Our second sponsor is DataSelf. DataSelf Analytics is a revolutionary reporting solution that enables organizations to make the most informed decisions faster and easier than ever. It uniquely simplifies business intelligence, empowers anyone to build and access dashboards, and delivers critical business insight when and where you need it. Our third sponsor is Aldrich Web Solutions. Are you a distributor using Acumatica, yet struggling with an e-commerce fit? US-based Aldrich Web Solutions out of Marion, Illinois, has 2 decades of experience helping distributors find success online. Our team of experts built the integration, creating websites that work effortlessly with Acumatica. With our reputation for swift customer service and meticulous attention to detail, we are the perfect fit for distributors needing online solutions. Please take a minute to support this podcast by clicking each one of the sponsor banners located at augforums.com/sponsors. Our sponsors track clicks, and every click helps to support this podcast. The second thing I'd like to mention is that I'm always looking for victims. I mean guests. If you use Acumatica in any capacity, no matter how small, I'd love to talk with you. Check out augforums.com/podcast and click the link near the top of the page to learn more about being a guest on the podcast. Third and finally, I'd love to see you listed on my Rolodex. Check out augforums.com/Rolodex to find out who else is using Acumatica and read the instructions at the top to see how you can add yourself to the list. All right, that's it for the pre-recorded intro. Let's get started. Today is Wednesday, January 31st, 2024, and this is episode number 123. You can find related links on the episode page at augforums.com/episode 123. In this episode, you'll hear part 1 of a compilation of interviews done at Acumatica Summit 2024. Since episode 123 and episode 124 are the same topic split into 2 parts, I'm going to use the magic of audio editing to copy the rest of this audio intro into both episodes. This was my 7th time being in person at an Acumatica Summit. If you count the 2 summits during the pandemic that I did not make it to in person, but I did do some interviews virtually, that would make it 9 summits. So I have been around the Acumatica Summits for quite a while, but every time I feel like I'm still trying to figure out how to do Summit. And this time I tried something new, as I do every summit. And rather than attend the sessions, I walked around and interviewed people. Now, in order to stand out, I wore a blue wig, which I will put on the episode page for both of these episodes to help people find me. And I really just embraced the random nature of bumping into people. I could have scheduled things out, but I just went with the random. and I really liked it. I've always struggled in the past with how much of Summit to schedule, scheduling. I want to meet so-and-so and so-and-so and, build out the schedule of people I want to see and when, versus just kind of randomly letting things happen. And it's always a struggle, but I just embrace the random nature of walking the halls and bumping into people. The interviews you'll hear vary quite a bit. There are some people are longer interviews. I think the shortest one is probably around 5 seconds with a tip about walking shoes. Even someone who felt they had nothing to share did have one tip to share in about 5 seconds. So quite a varying array of lengths and topics, and I loved it. It was a great way to have an excuse to talk to different people about different things. You'll hear even in part one of episode 123, you'll hear me talk to the person who participated in the demo during one of the keynotes, who shared his credit card information with Acumatica. And then he circles back around in part two. He found me this time and shared a follow-up, which was pretty cool. So you've got something like that. And then, of course, I like reporting, as we all know. And I, just talked about different things with different people. Before I had done a test with my laptop where I let it record all night using the microphone I was going to use and with the laptop lid closed, because the most amount of battery that gets consumed on my laptop is to keep the screen bright. And I wanted to see how long it would last, and it lasts like 8 to 10 hours, something like that. So I'm like, all right, I'll be just fine keeping the laptop lid closed, walking around with the mic. And I did that for I don't know how many interviews it was, but starting right during the second half of my conversation with Mike C., my guess is that the USB cable to the computer was too loose. And so the recording just stopped and I didn't realize it. So I actually lost a few interviews until I discovered it, including the second half of a conversation with Mike C., the CTO at Acumatica. We were talking about the new UI and how it's much more than just a new user interface. And I'm hoping to be able to get him back on the podcast just to have an entire episode talking about that. But unfortunately, that part of the conversation was lost, and several other interviews, including another AUG-SQL interview. So there is one AUG-SQL interview that made it in, you'll hear, but the first one was unfortunately lost. And I was actually surprised that even just with the random nature of the interviews, bumping into people, I happened to land on 2 people who use AUG-SQL, and that was pretty cool. So that was a challenge technically. I lost a few interviews there. Another technical challenge you'll hear during my interview with Jane Williams, that the second part of the interview is really weird. Like something went wrong with the recording, and I think it was, actually I don't even know what it was. The audio wasn't great. And so we then tried to clean it up and lost the original in the process. And you'll hear that the cleaned up part is like cutting out a bunch of stuff. And the reason was because, actually, I'm sorry, we didn't lose the original part. The original part had this really loud noise in the background. And so the cleaned up version at least doesn't have that, so you can at least listen to it, but it's cutting out parts frequently. And for some reason, mostly when Jane's talking and not when I'm talking. And I don't know, it makes you wonder if there's some gender bias in the AI that was used to do whatever magic it did to pull out the annoying noise. So unfortunately, we had that technical challenge. But other than those 2 things, I think it went pretty well. And now I just know, keep the laptop lid open, just keep the brightness down. The battery still did okay. And just make sure after every interview, it's still recording. And so, just part of the nature of trying something for the first time. But and you'll hear I didn't count the number of interviews yet, but there were quite a few. So at the time of this recording, I don't know what it was. And even though, in the intro to each of these episodes, I like saying the day that these interviews happened. It was actually across 3 days, January 29th, January 30th, January 31st. But I'm actually recording this intro March 8th, 2024, because it's taken me that long to get back to this project. I knew it would be quite a bit to put all the interviews together. I've done that hard part, and now I'm doing the easy part of tacking this intro on to the beginning. So it took me longer than I wanted to get this out, but I am getting it out finally. And I really enjoyed doing the interviews. As I mentioned at the beginning of this, every summit, I feel like I'm always struggling with how to quote do summit. And I feel like this year was the best. I'm going to do this again next year. Because, I actually didn't attend any sessions. I realized last year that, the sessions, rightfully so, are more catered to people who are newer in the Acumatica space because it's growing so much. You need content for people who are new to the space. So it's not that I know everything at all, but, a lot of the stuff in the sessions that I attended last year was kind of stuff I mostly knew. And so I decided to skip the sessions this year, and all I did was the interviews when I was at the Win. Now, I think part of why I enjoyed it so much is I did not attend the keynotes in person this time. I watched them virtually. And I like taking notes on Twitter. If you see my Twitter notes, I'll actually put links to my summary blog posts on the episode pages for these episodes. It was so much easier to do on the computer versus on my phone, taking pictures of the screens and then typing on my phone real fast. And also, being an introvert, the whole pump up nightclub feel of the keynotes is just not my thing. So I really enjoyed just watching it from my hotel room. And even my hotel, I'm not a Las Vegas person, so I didn't even want to stay on the Strip this year. Last year I stayed at the Wynn. This year I stayed about 20 minutes out at a Comfort Inn, and I loved it. I love being able to get off the Strip every night and watch the keynotes from my room and then roll in around lunchtime. So really it was just afternoons for me and, some little bit of evening time. And you'll hear one interview when I interview Arlene. It's actually at the party that Acumatica threw Tuesday night, so there's quite a bit of background noise, but still you can hear the audio just fine. So evening activities, but for an afternoon. Otherwise, the morning was just me relaxing in my hotel room, watching the keynotes and taking my time to get to the Win. And for me, that was the way to do it. I feel like it was great. And I really enjoyed all the conversations that I had. And before recording this here on March 8th, I went back and I listened to the approximately 2 hours of interviews, and a lot of stuff I didn't remember. This is always the case when I do this podcast. And it was just great to be reminded of just how many different perspectives I was able to get. And for me, that's the real benefit of the Acumatica Summit, because this is just a time where you have so many people in one place, and if you go around and talk to people, you're embracing the randomness like I did, but you just can't talk to everyone. It's impossible, right? So these 2 episodes are my contribution both to those of you who were at Summit and knowing you can't talk to everyone, but also to those of you who did not make it to Summit. You get an idea of the kind of people you can talk to if you do go. So that's it for my little intro. Now let's go ahead and launch into the interviews. Okay, I got Bob McDabney. He was the first guest ever on the Og Forums podcast. Yep. Wow. Mm-hmm. And it was at a summit. I think it was at the Cosmopolitan one.
Yeah, 2020.
And so what number summit is this for you?
This is number 6 for me and Enterprise Software Podcast.
So you guys have a pretty spiffy official booth here at the top of the escalators. And what are you hearing from people so far?
I'm hearing lots of good things. Everybody is clearly having a good time and pleased to be here, and they are happy with the progress that Acumatica is making with their functionality. And Ali talked specifically about AI today and what they're doing with that, and how they're really trying to put existing or newer technology into users' hands as quickly as they can. So that was interesting.
What? Anything else? Any other tidbits you can share with us? Biggest summit ever, I think, right?
Yeah. My guess is this is probably the biggest one they've had. I was at the keynote. I arrived a few minutes early, so I stood in the back. Couldn't find a chair, and of course it was dark. And I took a picture of the crowd, and it looked very full. So I've seen a lot of people stream by the Enterprise Software Podcast booth here at Acumatica Summit. So I know there's quite a crowd here.
And so you're going to publish probably a couple episodes out of all the interviews you're doing here?
We might get 3. What we do is we tell people 2 to 3 minutes, and then it usually goes on for like 5 or 6, which is fine because if it's fun to listen to, I'm all good with that, and so is Darcy, and so is Todd. So by the time we snip all that together, we'll probably get 3 30-minute shows. Acumatica will cover our entire February publishing calendar. How about that?
Well, I'm not competing with you. I'm just supplementing with the good work that you're already doing in the podcast world.
Well, thank you, Tim. I do appreciate that, and it's great to talk to you as always.
And so we'll listen to that Enterprise Software Podcast episode. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, sir. EnterpriseSoftwarePodcast.com. Look for us all through February covering everything at this show once again.
Okay, I got Candy Vitti here, of course, MVP, participant on community.acumatica.com extraordinaire. But you may not know this about her. Recently enthusiastic about, go ahead, tell us.
Pivot tables in
Acumatica.
Okay.
Tell us more.
So you can use a pivot table instead of a generic inquiry, and you can drill further into a pivot table, and you could do things such as see items that were invoiced by customers, things that, like if you had consultants that you were invoicing by consultants and their inventory ID was their name or whatever, and see what their billable hours were for the month or their billable rate, what items you sold in the month you were invoicing out, things like that. So I will be working with Chris Hackett from the community to do a webinar next month in February on pivot tables and how they can be utilized more in Acumatica, because I think they're very underutilized and people are not utilizing them to their full extent, and we can really get them out there and people can see them more now.
So instead of paging through pages and pages of generic inquiry data, you have everything summarized staring at you in one place.
Yes,
right?
And you can filter it, and you can toggle your filters, and you can create like a better view of things and how you want to see and faster. And you can, instead of looking by date, you can on the pivot table you can filter it by year or by month instead of by actual dates. You could do it by weeks, months, even quarters. I think is quarters in there. So there's a lot more flexibility with pivot tables than there are generic inquiries in a sense. So I think it'll be a lot more useful for things that especially the finance gurus want to see.
Cool. Yeah, I love pivot tables too.
Yeah.
So your webinar will be next month?
Yes. Well, either February or March. I'm going to work with Chris Hackett from the community to get it set up, when we can get it scheduled, and then we'll work through the dates and everything.
Cool. Love it.
So look out for that.
And what number summit is this for you? Do you know?
Number 4.
That's it?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's it.
You're a summit veteran though.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks
But
for,
I was at Summit before it was ever in Vegas. So I was when we were at really cool places like San Diego and Houston.
Hopefully we get back there someday.
Yes, to really cool places.
Thanks for stopping by.
Sure, thanks.
Did you have it?
Oh, go for it.
I got Steven here to share with me some tidbits about Acumatica that his company uses.
Well, we're a construction company, and GC Pay has been a lifesaver for us.
GC Pay.
Hey, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they do billing in Acumatica
Okay.
for construction.
Oh.
So retainage and all that, it's streamlined our whole process.
So it pulls what data out of Acumatica and then pushes invoices back in?
Exactly. It takes our
Okay.
invoices, it structures them in a way that retainage amounts are met, and then the construction company pulls from GC Pay.
Okay.
So we're actually, it's a really cool product.
So that means you don't have to deal with allocation rules in
Exactly.
Acumatica? Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's a
and
good
and
one.
in terms of integrations, we integrated UKG, the HR system, into Acumatica.
Okay.
So when employees change any of their information in UKG, it gets automatically pushed into Acumatica for us.
Is UKG an official ISV, or you built an integration?
We built an integration for it, and Acumatica's openness made that very easy to do.
Okay. So if someone else had UKG, maybe you'd be willing to share that integration with them. Okay.
Of course, I'd love to.
Reading your name tag, Steven Zur from Ani Property Management Services. Okay.
In Vancouver, BC, Canada.
Vancouver. All right. Thanks for sharing. Appreciate it.
No problem. Bye.
I've got Christian here with a take on customizing versus using ISV solutions. Tell me more.
Okay, so basically we stay away, or trying to stay away from customizations and stick more with ISV partners, and that's due to the constant changes or updates in Acumatica. You know, when you're dealing with customization, for every change in Acumatica, you have to make sure the customization works and doesn't break. In the past, that has caused a lot of issues, a lot of time.
Specifically with upgrades, I would think.
Upgrades for Acumatica. And it's caused a lot of issues and a lot of downtime and a lot of costs in fixing those customizations. So for us, basically, we try to stay with ISVs in the marketplace. They tend to stay more up to date with the Acumatica upgrades.
So it sounds a little bit like an insurance policy. You're making up the upgrade compliance someone else's headache, so you don't have to deal with it on your books.
Yep, that's correct.
Good tidbit. Thank you. Okay, we've got a tip about Summit at the Win here. Very practical advice.
Bring good walking shoes.
That's a great one. Thank you. Okay. All right, in the middle of an implementation, what system are you coming off of?
Macola.
And so you're just started implementing Acumatica, and what do you think of it so far?
So far, it's easy. Everything's easy to find. All the information's there. Get KPIs and reminders to outstanding tasks and that type of thing. Works very well for it.
Macola, is it like a green screen? Is it that old, or?
No, it's not. It's not green screen, but it's very antiquated. Very hard to data mine and get information back out, and don't necessarily trust the information you do get.
So maybe not old as dirt, but pretty old, and Acumatica feels a little more modern, huh?
Absolutely. Cool. Absolutely.
Thanks. All right, I've got a tidbit about the WMS and Acumatica.
Yeah, the last pass, I will say 2 or 3 versions in Acumatica. The WMS, that is the machine state that controls inventory and I will say pick, pack, and ship, put away, and those things were really complicated to customize before, and now it's really easy to do it.
So is this because of improvements to the WMS specifically, or the mobile framework in general?
Actually, it was the engine where the WMS is made. It has more options, so you can customize it, and I will say the documentation is not really good about it. We have done some customizations, and we learned, but it was like we had to learn. There is no customization, you can get it. So maybe we can go and do a thread or post. Yeah.
But if anyone's looking to customize Acumatica's native WMS, reach out to Diego Perez from Heuristic. Okay. Yeah. All right, cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right, I got Oliver here. He's got a tip about working with a financial report writer in Acumatica.
It is definitely not something that you can in 15 minutes and be prepared to use multiple screens, so you can run it simultaneously.
Oh, so 2 pieces there. Yeah, so if you're and you're talking about even making a change to a report, right?
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll typically log in on Chrome on one screen, and then I'll log in as Edge on the other screen. Save all the changes that I may make, and then I'll run the report again on the other browser. That way I can see it in real time and I make adjustments necessary, especially as it comes to page breaks and lines and formulas for adding up the accounts shown.
But that makes sense. Even if someone comes to you and they're like, hey, this is an easy change, and you just get it done. When you're making changes to financials, you don't want to screw up your profit and loss or something like that. You got to dot your I's, cross your T's, make sure everything's still working right?
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, I'm currently in the process of creating a redacted, not a redacted, but a reduced P&L that we can provide to our lenders, so they don't necessarily criticize us every expense trend that we have. But one thing I want to make sure is that everything is grouped together and shown on that report. I've found difficulty sometimes, especially intercompany accounts that we don't want necessarily those showing up. So we have to find a way to back those out. You can't just from account 6,000 because there's other accounts in there.
Do you actually do an elimination company for elimination entries?
No.
You just make your formula so that everything balances out.
Yeah, essentially. So we have a expense account that is essentially negative in one company and positive in the other company for administrative fees that we charge back to that other company. So that is something because a negative expense, it's actually.
And so even though Velixo is the most popular add-on tool, it sounds like we have evidence of a company that uses the financial report writer, maybe Velixo in the future, but it's working for you with just the out-of-the-box financial report writer.
Yeah. We're only 8 months into our conversion to Acumatica. Still exploring all our options reporting. For now, we're making.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. All right. I got changes to training material. Something. Go ahead, fill me in, Todd here.
All right. So we did a beta test in December, but basically what we're looking to do is taking the training material that today is very functional based to where it's more operational based. Okay. And what that really means, and it's sort of to help the onboarding process of consultants, right? So what it's going to be like is that picture. So what it's actually going to be like is saying, hey, if you're a GC, here's how construction really works, right? So It's taking not just the construction material, but how does it work with CRM? How does it work with field services? How does the payroll interact?
So you're starting with the business process and working back into the application rather than the other way around?
Yes, exactly.
And then where would that material live? Like, is you talking about changes to the wiki help, or is what kind of material?
It's actually going to be like the training material that's like on the...
like the PDF files on the Open University.
Yeah. But it's actually going to ultimately... And again, there's some time still involved to do all this, right?
You're giving us the grand vision,
Vision. But ultimately, it's going to be like a 2 to 3 month onboarding program to where we'll actually do this. We'll give you actually sort of, hey, go do some form of the business consultant training. But that business consulting training is going to be tiered towards construction if that's your industry that you're knowledgeable about, versus it just being general accounting, right? So like if you go into F100, it just talks about F100.
Yeah.
What we're doing is we're going to take all the training material, the functional stuff that's there, and actually then translate it all into the verticals. So whether it be construction, whether it be commerce, whether it be manufacturing, not specifically pipe, no. Not specifically
pipe molding something out of organic materials.
But at the end of the day, it's going to be very focused on that whole process and trying to translate it just for that industry.
So the target is consultants, not customers, it sounds like.
The first part of it will be consultants and even salespeople, right? Because if you think about it, how do all the modules work together for this particular construction industry, right? Because again, it's still very all piecemealed, very module based. So now it's actually bringing it all together. So I think a really good example, like in construction, like in your general ledger, subcounts aren't very common, right? So why do you spend a whole lot of time talking about it? Here's what we normally see. Now, yes, there could be some subcounts, so you need to at least talk about it real quick, but you're not going to spend a whole lot of time like you do in distribution or possibly manufacturing, or what are all the benefits and how does it all work. So we still hit lightly on some aspects, but then we get really in the focus areas of what's really important to, again, like a GC in construction. Right?
It sounds like a consultant's approach to training rather than like a system administrator's approach to training.
Exactly. That would be exactly right. Cool. And then it can be translated a little bit then to a user, right? So if a user wants to see it, so at least then they know the full business processes, and it almost in some aspects becomes a playbook, right? It really comes, here's the things that you need to set up, here's the reasons why, here, and going down that process. So you can actually help with the implementation to be a little bit smoother and simpler.
Sounds like a tall order, but a cool vision. So good luck in executing it. Sounds fun.
Well, we've done 2 beta tests. So last summit, we did the first beta, and we got really good feedback. And then in December, we did another run. And we enhanced it more, because the first one we did last summit was just really construction. It was sort of, what kind of questions do you ask, and along with that, and then how do you sort of get it to translate into construction lingo, right? So then in December, we did one that really brought in, here's the reasons why manufacturing would interact. Here's the reasons why you would bring in payroll, and sort of bringing over the other modules
Still with your
together.
construction hat on, though.
Yes, all with the construction hat on.
Okay.
So how would I get?
Oh, we have a question from the audience here. Go ahead.
How would I get access to this?
You don't. It's still in beta.
Yeah, but how would I get enrolled in the beta?
Oh, how would you get enrolled? When we do the next class, then we'll reach out and let you know.
What's the name?
It doesn't have a name of class right this second.
Okay, you give
The
me another reason
PAMs.
to call you. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
So talk to Todd Coons. That sounds like how you do
Yeah.
it, right?
Or talk to your Pam.
Okay, talk to your fan. All right, cool. Thanks for sharing. Okay, further on the training material. Go ahead.
So once we've got the material together, then what we're actually going to do is like a 2 to 3 month onboarding program, to where now the consultant will actually then sort of take some classes virtually. Then we'll bring them in, and we'll do like a crash course for a week. And then afterwards, then we'll have
Bring them in person, or
yeah, it'll be an in-person training, right? Because they've already done sort of the basic stuff that anybody could do. Then we actually get into real details where they can ask questions. We go through all that, and then we actually have we send them home with homework, and then we have daily touch points with them to make sure that they're moving along with the schedule. And then we haven't determined how many times we actually have an in-person versus virtual, but it really becomes a mentoring program early on to get that window as quickly as possible to where they can actually be self-sufficient.
So Summit this year eliminated the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday training sessions, and just did like 3 days of show. Sounds like this is sort of a step back in a direction of training focused on consultants, it sounds like.
It is.
Would it be maybe too early to tell, but are you thinking like bring people to an Acumatica office, or maybe you do have like road training, or what's your thought on that currently?
So there's a lot.
Maybe too early to tell.
So there's a lot of ideas going around.
Yeah.
Do we create an excellence center? And where would that be located? Obviously, putting it in Seattle, because then people have access to the sea levels, so mostly there. Do we do it in Columbus because that's where I'm at and it's cheaper and it's easier to get to?
Vote for me. From me.
So there's that piece.
And then the virtual, how much is really in person versus virtual?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's still some of that, balance that we've got to figure out. And ultimately, we got to figure out what the partners want, right?
Yeah,
when they're bringing in consultants. But the other neat part about this too is that it's not just going to be for partners consultants. We're actually reaching out to the ecosystem outside of Acumatica, looking at other consultants in the other ERP system, see if we can get them through and get them trained up on Acumatica.
Yeah, cool.
So, what the fees are and how we're going to do that, we don't know yet.
Sure.
But that's sort of the bigger, longer vision of how that's going to work and go down to play. But I think at least for the summit, I think the focused learnings actually work really well here, because now they get that 1 hour tidbit, because throughout the years, partners and customers are always asking for, well, we need this thing to go a little bit deeper. The training was hard because it was a big group and it was a wide variety of people, and we couldn't really tailor it to everybody. So if we can be very specific about a business requirement, then that works out really well, because now the partners and the customers can go listen to that particular business critical event and figure out how do you handle that in Acumatica.
Okay. Cool.
So people get a lot more out of it. So we'll see what the feedback is this year and what that looks like going forward. But we do know that there's a lot of, the training is really good as it is, but there's a lot more that we can do. And we're going to constantly continue to improve, sort of like what John had mentioned in one of the keynotes, right? We're not resting where we're at. We still we know we have a lot to improve on. And that's one of the big areas that we know we need to improve on.
So that's good to hear. Acumatica is not dropping training. There's things in the works that you want to continue to make training better, and it's not that it got removed from Summit and then we'll never see it again. Sounds like they're just kind of reworking the way you deliver it.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Testing. All right, we've got some quick feedback about the breakfast. Go ahead.
Yeah, on this summit, I miss the eggs and the bacon at the breakfast, so I would suggest to have them next year.
So we'll be back at the Win next year. Hopefully there's eggs and bacon.
I hope so. Maybe if I know that there's not going to be eggs, probably I won't come at the summit.
All right, you heard it. All right, I've got Jeremy from Nuvei. What's going on with that? Paya Nuvei? Tell me.
Yeah, so Nuvei acquired Paya this last year, and it brings us basically global payment options, a lot more horsepower, 2,000 employee company, and process in, I think it's 47 or 50 some countries, and over 600 payment methods.
So 2,000 employees sounds cool, but you were telling me about some other stuff that sounded even cooler. Go ahead and tell me about that, about Nuvei.
Well, So Ryan Reynolds is our spokesperson, and they make some fantastic videos. And our mission in life is to get him to one of the Acumatica summits.
That'd be cool.
So far, it's been a no.
At least a cardboard cutout, maybe.
Right. That's the goal. I think right now that's all I've been allowed is a cardboard cutout.
But that's even a big deal because with all the trademark stuff and everything, or I don't know if it's trademark, copyright, whatever, like getting a cardboard cutout of someone is a win right there, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, he's an awesome ambassador and investor in the company, and at the end of the day, I think it keeps what a lot of people think with ERP is boring. It keeps it fun and interesting. You just got to go out and check out the videos on Twitter and YouTube that they've done with Nuvei. They're hilarious.
So Nuvei, Nuvei. So if I Google Nuvei and then Ronald Reynolds, I should land on something.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
And then you're also saying something with Formula One cars, like the real F1 cars, not like the F2, 3, or whatever Acumatica did recently. Nuvei's got a real F1 car?
Yeah, so they sponsor the Petronas team. And so we have three races in the U.S., and one of them we've dedicated, we're bringing back the President's Circle. So we call it the President's Club. And so our top, by publisher, our top VARs, I think this year there's 4, and we're bringing those top VARs to Miami in May. And they get an exclusive behind-the-scenes look. They'll get to meet the drivers. It's a really immersive experience.
So you said by publisher. Does that mean you're picking one Acumatica partner or 4 Acumatica partners?
One Acumatica partner, and then we have the other brands behind that we support, other publishers that we support.
So that'll be for the calendar year 2024?
Yep, that'll be for this year. So we're actually doing it in May. So we didn't get a lot of runway. So as you can imagine, there'll be more happening next year, I would assume. I can't speak to the commitments around F1 and what they're going to allot, but...
Cool, very cool.
Yeah, it's exciting.
So sounds like Nuvei brings... not just an investment, but it brings some cool factor.
Absolutely. It's going to bring a lot of additional services and tools, which you see over here, our video with our AR portal. We're bringing out vendor financing. We're going to have AP later this year. There's just a lot of exciting tools that are coming out. So again, trying to get closer to that one-stop shop and just providing a lot of value for the VAR partners so they can come in and get all the things that they need around payments.
Cool. So we knew Paya, and now we know Paya is Nuvei, Nuvei.
Correct. Thank you. Yes.
All right, I got some feedback from a real-life VAR about what it's like in the real world working with Acumatica ISV. So we're actually here in the marketplace. There's a lot of ISVs around. I like to refer to walking around the marketplace as being like swimming with sharks sometimes. You don't know like what's real and what's not, but we got some real-world feedback from what it's like working with Acumatica ISVs.
So it's actually really great working with all the ISVs because it's just so easy to integrate their solutions with Acumatica, and that's really very important with a lot of our clients because you need everything to work, and you might not have everything with Acumatica, but it's so easy to integrate, right? With, you're adding on more things, and I mean, the ISV teams are just fantastic because they're so quick with just like getting back to you, for example, and just like working with the Acumatica team as well. So it's just very easy to kind of work together.
And when you say adding on more things, like maybe the ISV has an official integration with Acumatica that doesn't handle a specific thing that one of your clients needs, are you kind of saying that they can pretty quickly add in the additional things that a client might be asking for?
Oh yeah, definitely. It just enhances a lot of the features that Acumatica already has as well, and it's just, it's on the go. You can just add on in the future as well. It's not like something that, in the initial stage you need to purchase, for example. Like later on down the road, if you find a need for a specific thing, you just come to Summit, for example, look at all the ISVs that are there, see which one fits your company, and you can just go from there.
Cool. Thanks for the feedback. Okay, we've got someone who's excited about the new Acumatica Professional Services Edition. And why? How come?
I'm super excited because we use Acumatica right now, project accounting, and would love some more features with time tracking of employees against those projects. We use Velixo quite a bit to kind of manage and analyze maybe cost of employee against projects and implementations. Also have similar customers also that we've implemented projects for. So just to have this extra project services added on to the price list with Acumatica kind of bundled together, I'm super excited, hoping for some new reports to come out, right? Especially like employee utilization, things like that would be really nice to see in Professional Services Edition.
And so, yeah, we don't know the details of it yet, but like, what are some things in addition to reporting? What kind of functionality are you hoping that it would have? You know, maybe not initially, but on the near-term roadmap.
More like the entire sales cycle to implementation, right? So, quote, the opportunities all the way to creating the project, all the different people involved, the tasks that it took to get there, Professional services doesn't just start at the beginning of, a project. It starts at the sales cycle. So just having that full circle wrapped all together is that's what I'm kind of looking forward to.
So it sounds like Acumatica has a lot of the pieces that you need. You're just looking for more of that cross-module workflow stuff that we see a lot demoed. You're looking for more of that in the professional services area.
Sure, just more representation on the professional services side because, like I said, yes, you can do all of that in projects right now, but just like they're doing right now, you have the manufacturing edition, the construction edition, just to be able to say, hey, we also have a professional services edition. I'm not just selling you the advanced business and tacking on projects, right? It's just easier, I guess, a selling point for your end client that, hey, it's actually a professional services edition. For customers, that edition naming.
Yep, makes a big difference, right?
It's a big volume, speaks words, right? Okay. Oh, yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I've got Mike C here. This shows you how awesome Acumatica is. Mike C is willing to jump on here. I loved the demo this morning, how you showed the calendar board in the field service area and the kind of things the new UI is capable of. Maybe share some thoughts of where you can apply that UI functionality in other areas. Potentially. This is all like, the realm of theory here. Yeah.
So first of all, we're definitely looking for adding such kind of functionality in the other areas of the application. We're talking about the manufacturing boards, we're talking about like scheduling the resources for the professional services and so on. Now, how technology is here and why this technology is exciting. In what you've seen on my demo, you do have the left panel where we see all the outstanding and scheduled orders or documents, and then we have a right side where we have the panel. So this panel, actually, the calendar itself, consists of two components. One component, surprisingly, is our ordinary grids. Actually, both of these panels is ordinary grid.
I wondered that. Okay.
With the standard grid filtering functionality, sorting, all the shortcuts and everything.
Okay.
But it also shows how we can use this technology to integrate it with the third-party components, where the calendar board itself is a third-party component that's get integrated into this grid. So grid works as a data source, filtering, toolbar functionality, servicing this third-party component that used for reflecting the presentation.
So what about adding a new column? Would that have automatically showed up in that calendar board? Or not
calendar
quite
board
that?
is not showing the columns, but whenever you click on the item in the calendar board, you do have a pop-up for the quick view.
I like that.
And the moment you add this column to the grid, it will pop up in this quick view, so you will be able to see it there, modify it from there and so on.
Got it. And then, so there's two pieces then. There's one, being able to add an additional data point to the pop-up.
Yep.
Can you also add fairly easily an additional data point to what you see on the calendar view itself for each of the individual elements?
That one is not so straightforward. That will require programming. It's not something like unprogrammable. But yeah, that's pretty much what we did when we make all this marking, highlighting the priority, coloring them, depending on the type of the order and status of the order, enabling, disabling them, and so on. It's absolutely everything.
So what we saw was more like a chart or a resource schedule type of a layout. Is there also thoughts to make additional types of layouts where you're kind of heading in the direction of a dashboard, where it's almost becomes a chart at that point with pop-ups that have data elements on it? Is that too crazy? Or
it's not too crazy, but you're stealing some part of my presentation next week.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, you're rolling this out 1 year at a time. It's been a huge project.
It's a huge project.
Props to you guys for staying the course.
4 years ago.
Wow.
And I actually had a joke where, like in the end of my presentation, I wanted to say, as we stay in Vegas next year, you know what I'm going to present.
Well, love the
But I will not do
presentation.
that. I will try to move away from that.
Well, loved it.
Next year, it will become a mainstream.
Keep at it, and I love to see the progress on it every year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
See you in an hour.
Yeah, see you.
All right, I've got Neil here from Wilmar. Wilmar was Distribution Customer of the Year, is that right?
Customer of the Year.
All right, so how does one get Distribution Customer of the Year, or at least how did you get Distribution Customer of the Year?
All right, been very involved in the community. Did a community mentor webinar for them. Been involved in our the Pacific Northwest user group. Also been helping out the product team as a member of the distribution advisory board. And on top of that, been helping them with some like product features, just bouncing ideas off of like their product team and kind of helping work with them and iterate on some of their design. And they had a lot of questions of like, hey, here's this prototype. Can you take a look at it and give some feedback?
And so I think we're planning to do a future episode on your involvement in the sales allocation screen, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was originally something that I worked with my VAR to design for us to basically we used hard allocation and we needed a tool to manage incoming inventory and being able to reallocate product around based off of new product becoming available. But using hard allocations, there was no tool available for that besides going to each individual line item and allocating manually.
So that new screen is a popular one, and so I'm looking forward to hearing details of how you're actually rolling it out once you, I think you're in the middle of putting it in the real world, is that right?
Yep.
All right.
We're currently upgrading right now and very eager to get our hands on the full-blown feature now.
Cool. So that's a preview of a future episode once you are up and running and can talk more details.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, we're going to get intelligence. We don't know specifics here. We're just guessing. So we've seen the keynotes where AI gets talked about, the obligatory AI mentions, but you've got some thoughts about how things play out. Go ahead.
Sure. So my thoughts on AI in the Acumatica space is the downward effects on customers for cost based upon instead of servers that are running on CPUs or running on GPUs and the power that is required to actually run these servers, and saying that this year is based upon sustainability of what Acumatica's take is on all of that.
So is your concern, so there's a sustainable impact, but I think mainly our concern is dollars, the cost in dollars, right?
Costing dollars, yes.
So neither one of us know, but I don't know if we know on the back end if Acumatica is using like another AI engine, like something in Azure where the compute is handled outside of the Acumatica server, right? Or if it's their own AI, which would eat up the processing power on the server. I don't know if you know. Do you know?
No, but most of them I thought are on AWS versus Azure. I'm not sure if that's like...
Yeah, so like Acumatica is running, their instances on AWS, but it's just virtual machines on AWS as far as I know, right? And then they, like when they do the image recognition on, on AP Bills now, right? They're calling out, I'm pretty sure, to an Azure AI service for that, right? So that checks the AI box, but it's actually an Azure image recognition that's doing the work. So I don't know, when they talk about AI, I don't know if it's a combination of multiple AI third-party AI technology. Are they going to call it ChatGPT for certain things? Or are they building their own AI brain inside of Acumatica? I don't know, right? I think there's some sessions out there, or were today, but I don't know if you got into any of those, did you?
I did not, but those are the questions that I have, is how it's going to integrate all together, and ultimately the cost for customers that want to utilize AI in the future. And if they are a customer now, how much cost is there going to be later on to get onto a product that is connected into Acumatica with AI?
It's a great question. So I think first we need to understand the technology better, and then we can calculate the cost, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Well, good point. Glad you brought it up.
Thank you.
All right, found the guy who used his credit card during, here I'll walk with you guys, during the demo this morning. So what happened? Did the charge hit your card?
No, it did not. So I looked at my transactions, tried to search for it. It didn't come through. So I felt a little guilty, emailed Doug about it. I was like, hey man, I really want this to work, and I don't want to take your money. Can we do it again? And he's like, no, don't worry about it. We actually canceled it on the back end, and enjoy the money. But he did said, But if you do gamble it away and you win $1 million, I want 10% of the cut.
So it did work. They just canceled it.
They just canceled it. Yeah.
That was a pretty cool demo to try
was.
that. That was gutsy.
It was, but I wanted to make sure everyone knew that Acumatica works because
Awesome.
I love Acumatica. So
Hey, thanks for doing that
Yeah.
demo. That was fun this morning.
thank you.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thanks.
appreciate it.
All right, I've got Jane here. Used to work with Jane, and Jane is a low-code, no-code aficionado, just like I am. And she was in the low-code, no-code session here at Summit, and she's got some stuff to share about it. Go ahead and talk to us about it.
Yes, what was really cool is the ability to couple a sub workflow, so with a business event. So you can execute a change in the workflow by, for example, changing the status of a transaction, but you can also trigger other things off of it. You can pair it with a business event. So you could click a button. Let's just say, for example, that button was in the low code, no code session that I attended. They create a button at the top of a case, and they clicked on the button that said share, and it then went out, allowed you to input some criteria such
With
as
like a pop-up, little pop-up
like a
window
pop-up
and some
box.
fields on it? Okay.
A pop-up box, and it was an email address and then a free-form note.
Okay.
So they put a note in there, and when they said okay, it created the activity for you, and then it also sent out the email and made the case transfer to a new status of open.
Okay.
So if you think about if you're in support and you go to open that case, and you could obviously, there's many ways to skin this cat, right? But you could respond to the sender of the case, or you could assign it to someone else and share that information, send an email to them. So that's just one example. They also referenced,
Wait, on that one, can I ask? So they're probably using the workflow engine to create the pop-up, is that right?
Correct, and change the status.
And change the status, okay. So you click OK, but then the sending of the email, is this where you were talking about a business event as a kind of a sub-workflow? You think that's what was going on?
Correct. So you can couple the workflow with actions, and the actions being a defined business event.
So the workflow engine can trigger business events, which can then trigger even import scenarios. You're sort of like creating this chain of things to get stuff done.
Right.
That opens up a lot of possibilities.
Well, you think about even in field service, even if you were to do that out in the field and you needed to send an email or update something in Acumatica from a case, it makes a transaction be so agnostic to what you're really using it for. Think about a case being something related to a field service visit or something on site. You think about the stages you could define and certain triggers off of it. It's just, my head exploded, right?
Me too. I like the example this morning during the keynote talking about cases to be used anywhere in workflow, like for
They were doing
anything.
returns, right?
Yeah, they were doing returns, which I think is kind of built into the case screen, but to your point, using the workflow engine in business events, you could use cases to help with the workflow in any process in Acumatica, right?
One of my favorite things about Acumatica is the evolution of the product set. And, it's just your book teacher will learn, right? And you're forced to. I could go back and now, remember when we had to build GIs? And that seems long ago, but it wasn't. I liken it to things like, we don't have to go to the store anymore. Or you believe we're getting in cars with strangers? I mean, who wants that? And that's how I kind of feel about with Acumatica. Remember when GI, any other functionality, but they seem to be. Also, I'd say, would you agree with
The pace of development? That's a good question. I'd have to think about that one. But
about it.
I like your point, though, that you're not comparing Acumatica to a legacy product. You're comparing it itself. That's a perspective I hadn't considered. Like, it's easy to say, all right, Acumatica doesn't a legacy. But now to say that Acumatica did a few years ago, that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
And that speaks to the rapid. That's interesting.
So it's been a great season. I don't know. I just always invigorate, not only about the product, but the users. And I've implemented quite a few that aren't as great and hear what they're doing. I've got one that's in the warehouse, and we sat down and I've been BMS, but isn't that? So everybody can get that application.
Yeah, it's not just learning about new features and new things Acumatica does. It's learning new ways that people are using them. That's just as valuable, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What about other things you got from that low code, no code session? So you mentioned a couple of the cases or any other.
Obvious, and that's going to they've built to prioritize what one of the biggest, and I know I've lost how many NAS tabs. I call it the middle ribbon.
Yeah, I didn't realize you could reorganize those. I knew you could do the fields. That was probably shown, but I didn't know.
Yeah. So I think that's going to, I am from a background legacy. So sometimes I get a little frustrated with Acumatica because I want but I think it pays off.
Sure.
And I'm starting to.
Yeah, and you kind of alluded to it earlier in the conversation that the way I would phrase it is like we're given a lot of tools, right? But then it's still up to us to use those tools to finish off the system. Whereas, other products are better at building out a vertical maybe and building out the functionality. But then the problem is it's what you see is what you get. You can't tweak it, right? So it's pros and cons. With Acumatica, you can craft a better solution for someone, but there's not as much there out of the box. But these low code, no code tools they really blow your mind when you're trying to think about now I have like 3 different ways I could do this. What's the best one for this situation?
Right. I walked out of that, so the colleague, much more than I am, and he couldn't even speak. He was like, I can't even, my mind won't stop. I don't know, I got to think about this. So,
well, that's a good sign.
It was.
I'm curious to pick your brain on this one. I've noticed this one. I'm running if you've run into it. So I haven't pulled out the new workflow engine in the real world. I'm getting close. Although I focus mostly on reporting, because I only focus on Acumatica, I still get involved in process, and so this has come up. I have thrown business events at a lot of things, but I've always been like, why would I even care about the workflow engine? Because I've been able to do most of what I care about using. But I realized one reason is the more complexity that you introduce import scenarios that are triggered by business, the longer it takes for them to execute. And so when a user is on the screen, they do something, it gives you this green processing is done, but really all that happens with the business event is it hands it off to a queue to go do the work. And that could take like 15, 20 seconds to do. So that's where I've finally been like, all right, now I know why I need it. And I'm curious, have you run into something similar on your end?
I haven't with the time. I've done a workflow and some extensive business, but I haven't the ability to enter a purchase to the vendor. But you need we have a vendor approval that and it would happen. So it would go from hold, and then it may actually right. But this way, that the dates. So that's how
the workflow engine.
The workflow engine, like to enter another status.
Okay.
And that was.
And yeah. So now maybe the lines are going to blur a little bit for you, deciding which one do I workflow.
Right.
What one do I reach for in my tool belt, like business event or workflow?
Well, and even that of validating, you could also Boolean. Just to
Good point. Good point.
So now it becomes what tool.
Good point. Good point. Yeah, there's an art to this.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And I'm learning. I like the easier, it's visual, and then you can build all kind of the status. Okay.
Absolutely.
I've got a question. You know how it backs it up, right? Now there's what is?
Oh, I'm not gonna be able to help you there. Yeah. I saw that the feature is there, but why they did it, the parallel processing. I don't think in fact.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure there's. I'll go. That makes sense.
Maybe outside processing. I don't know, where you send something out,
that could be it.
Or a situation where you have something needs to get painted, something needs to get cut, but it's not the same thing. Maybe it's like different material, raw materials,
or sub-assemblies
they could happen in tandem.
Out. Yeah,
could be something like that.
Yeah, no, I'm really curious.
I think that's a big one though. But both the company part of manufacturing with the parallel operator, those are maybe even people who maybe weren't thrilled about Acumatica manufacturing.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. Well, hey, thanks for especially all the low code, no code.
You're welcome.
You're a perfect person.
You're welcome. So I've got.
Okay, so I got Andrew here, and he's telling me that he came to Summit. It gave him a ton of ideas of what he could do, and tell me, like, right now you were saying something about underutilizing Acumatica. Is that where you feel you're at before Summit right now?
Yeah, that's right. We've been on Acumatica for 4 years, but really underutilized it. I mean, we're just using the GL and payables, just that finance module. But this Summit was perfect for me because now I'm exposed to all these different things that we can do. I just left the session on import-export scenarios. We look at all these AP automation options. There's so much stuff.
And so I'm curious there, like, when you write something down on your to-do list, what do you feel like is mainly driving your interest? Is it the technical feature, or is it more the use case that they showed, or another customer that you talk to and how they're using the feature?
So we're on an overall mission of being more efficient, getting rid of paper, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of these things just fill into that. Like the AP automation is easy. We still have an amount of paper that flows through our office that just is obscene. So there's several AP automations here, even some stuff natively in Acumatica. So that's what goes on my list. Trying to figure out. Now I know there's some options. Now we got to figure out the best one that's going to work best for us.
Okay, that makes sense. So would you say that, a lot of these things, I know we're generalizing here, but would you say that like a lot of these things you just didn't even know existed, or maybe you knew it existed, but you didn't know enough about it to get you really interested in it?
Some of a combination. Like this last session I was in was pretty technical, and like maybe I could have figured it out. Maybe I could have, stayed up till 2 a.m. watching some YouTube videos. Maybe I could have called some Tim dude. I don't know. But just seeing the guy walk through, hey, here's how you do it. Here's the screens you are, whatever. Now way easier. I could go figure it out.
And that's a great point to me, since I'm kind of in the training mindset of creating video training courses, that is a big distinction between, hey, I could go out and read 1,000 posts on the community to figure this out, or watch a ton of YouTube videos, but that someone took the time to put together an hour-long presentation. The flow of that presentation is meaty enough because of the length of it, right? But then it flows well enough that you don't have to spend as much time to get it, right? Is that a good way of putting it?
That is a good way of putting it. So this conference, the other thing that's good is some other conferences I go to were very high level. In this one, you have lead developer, whatever. He's in the guts. Just doing exactly, what I would be trying to do. So that was really good to see.
And so now you've got a list. It has now become the hard part of prioritizing that list?
That's constantly my problem, prioritizing. The list always grows. In off topic, one of the things I'm trying to do this year is outsource more of that list. So I'm a nerd at heart, and I like this stuff, so I want to figure it out. Sure. But no, it's not always the best use of my time. So outsourcing some of that's another goal this year too.
So it sounds like 2 extra columns in your Excel spreadsheet, one for priority and one for who's going to do it.
Exactly.
Well, hey, that's a great practical tip and a great reason to come to Summit. You come away with a list, and I always like to say, when you have that big list, as much as it's kind of overwhelming sometimes, at least it's job security, right?
Exactly. That's it.
All right, we got someone here who just attended a session I wanted to attend but missed. It was about creating new screens from a development side. Talk to us about what you learned there.
Right, so I'm brand new to the whole Acumatica environment, but I was really impressed with the last session was about creating the new screens, and I was impressed with, it seems like a lot of effort went into the development of this process. They were able to create the screens, but once everything was connected, it made it so it was able to light up for all the O data and all the integrations, the various imports and exports were just natively available to those windows once they're created.
Yeah, there's no extra work, right? It's just the benefit of developing in the framework.
Exactly. Everything ties in. It seemed like pretty seamless.
And were they doing it in Visual Studio, or were they doing the work in the customization project editor?
Both. So they were using the customization project, which exposed the libraries to Visual Studio. So you could use, like myself being real familiar using Visual Studio, I could do all the work there, and everything lit up on that side.
Okay. Yeah, great point though, because I think, my opinion, the typical developer mindset is naturally inclined to create it from scratch.
Right.
Whereas, and a lot of times it's just because you don't know what's already there, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a huge light bulb as someone who's kind of newer to the framework to realize I don't have to create the API. I don't have to create all that other stuff. It just comes naturally, right? And then
as long as you're following, they went in heavily on the best practices, and if you're following the best practices, it's just going to make your life a lot easier down the road.
And it's good to have that carrot, because there's pain to developing within a framework, right? Because there's a lot of undocumented stuff and stuff you have to just learn through blood, sweat, and tears, but at least you now have some benefit, some light at the end of the tunnel. Is that kind of a good way of describing it?
Exactly, and they pointed me in the right direction as far as the help that Acumatica site to be able to go there, and everything's pretty well documented there. So
cool. So have fun using that new knowledge this next year.
Yes, will do. Thank you.
All right, we've got another OG SQL user here, and what would you say it's been like for you? Good, bad, sort of good? What's your overall sentiment been on OG SQL?
off the charts. It's an incredible tool. It has been a life changer for me and our implementations, and then even our post-go lives, able to go back and query things quickly, get things out of the system that generic inquiries, just when you have to bring in subqueries, things like that to roll up data, much more useful. Dump that out.
Awesome. Love that. Yeah, so give me, sounds like you're already heading that direction, but give me the main use case that you found. Are you like going around deleting tables? I hope not. Are you doing SQL views? What's the main thing that caused you to reach into your tool belt for AugSQL?
We're not deleting tables. We're not modifying a lot of data. We're being very careful about that. Main use case for us is custom DAX. We've found custom DAX very useful for certain customers, and creating the subqueries or the views on SQL Server that support that DAC. It's very nice to publish the DAC and then go back and be able to modify those subqueries to tweak a little bit, maybe filter it a little differently before it gets to the DAC, but then being able to modify that live without having to go and customize, take the system down. I can do it during the day, which is great. That has been the best use of the tool that we've found so far.
Love it. I've noticed myself, that's been my main use case for it, because you do need to create the customization project to publish that final DAC and make it available, but then you can make changes to the SQL, change the where clause or whatever, real time during the day, so you don't have to have a dev environment. You're working with live up-to-date data rather than a copy from a month ago or whatever, and a lot of times sounds like you're finding you can make changes without even needing to publish a new DAC, is that right?
Absolutely. Awesome. And also I want to mention that the instructions that you gave at the very beginning of the tool about make sure you include your company IDs, because you don't see those in the DAC, but it is useful when we come back and we include company IDs, link those together. Everything works beautifully.
Awesome.
I've had a coworker, she experienced the hard way by not including the customer IDs that you do not get the right data when you have snapshots, etc.
Right? It gets really weird, yeah.
Yeah, the snapshots sitting out there from 6 months ago, it's like, my number doesn't change, but it does change when you put the company ID in there and you link it properly.
Okay.
So we're a SQL shop. We've used SQL forever. And this has just been such a great extension to our Acumatica tool belt.
Awesome. Love it. Can I ask you, have you done anything with scheduling SQL code, like scheduling a sort procedure to aggregate some data into custom tables? Have you tried anything like that yet?
I have not tried anything like that. I think that is in our next evolution.
Okay.
And I'm really excited to see what you guys do when you provide a new version, etc. So you've got a customer for life here.
Love it. Thanks for the feedback.
All right. Thanks, Tim.
I've got someone here. This is Brandy, who is using, I've got Brandy here, and she's using an ISV solution called Trailed. I've heard good things about that. How's it been going for you?
Trailed's been excellent. I've been able to automate most of my AP and my payments and reduce my AP staff to drive efficiencies within the organization.
And what kind of business are you in? Like, what kind of invoices are coming in? Are you construction or distribution? Or
We're distribution, so we're running all of our PO-based invoices through Trailed.
Oh, so, okay. I've been wanting to know more about this in the real world. So you actually have invoices coming in that have not just vendors and dollars and invoice numbers, but they actually have PO numbers on them.
PO numbers, and we require a three-way match to those POs.
Okay. And
so
Trailed
dollars,
is doing that.
quantities.
Okay.
And all the receipt has to match the invoice. Yes.
Oh, so and it's pushing it into the bills and adjustment screen.
Yes.
And if you were doing it manually, you'd have to click like the add PO receipt button and then find the PO receipt, check the lines off. Trailed is doing all that for you?
Automatically.
Ooh. And it's working in the real world.
It's working in the real world. We've been on for almost a year now, and I've reduced AP from one full FTE to 10% of another FTE.
Wow. And then do you actually do you watch the metrics as far as like how many bills you send over to Trailed and how many you have to manually intervene on versus how many mess up? Do they even show you those kind of metrics?
They show them, well, we set it up to approve every single invoice. So we are reviewing every invoice that comes through for any freight variance, since that's a threshold, usually variance right now that we're reviewing.
Okay. With like an approval map rule.
Correct. There's a mapping. Operations has to approve any variance, or our procurement team if there's a price variance.
Okay. And do you have data on like what percentage of it? Because I'm sure a trail can't be perfect. I'm sure it messes some things
No,
up.
but we've set thresholds. So as a company, we've decided that 10% price variance is acceptable without approval chain to be required.
Oh, okay, but that's like, there's nothing wrong with the data that Trail put into the system.
Correct.
It just needs someone's approval.
Correct.
Okay. What about on the like data capture side? Like, do you have any data that shows you what percentage of the time maybe Trail grabbed the wrong thing for the invoice number or didn't actually grab the correct vendor? I would think it messes up sometimes, right?
No, after you've trained it 3 times on the integration, AI has trained the system to look at the field by vendor.
Okay. So you found it's just been reliable after that?
Yes, once you tell it where to go for the PO, it memorizes that.
So I've tried the regular Acumatica document recognition thing. One thing that was weird to me, like I could put an invoice in, it would maybe not guess it correctly. I would teach it, and then I would put in the same exact invoice the second time, and it'd still get it wrong. Like
real time.
It doesn't take a day for the AI to learn it. It learns it in real time.
Real time.
These are like basic questions, but like, I don't know. I just don't know who's actually doing it in the real world, so this is cool.
Rule of 3. Once you've trained it 3 times, it knows.
Wow, very cool. Any other tidbits you can share with people who maybe think AP automation is just a phantom marketing thing? Like, you're really doing it? Any other tidbits?
I didn't think it could be as streamlined as it is. It's faster than I could have imagined.
And how long have you been using it for?
Almost a year.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks for that. All right. Well, that's it for now. We'll catch you on the next episode of augforums.com Real Talk. Thanks for listening, and take care.